evening, everyone. I'm calling to order the Planning Commission for June 8th, 2023. Can I get a roll call, please?
Mark Hitchens.
Present.
Cinda Rader.
Present.
Jake Lovelace.
Present.
Dana Arth.
Present.
Donnie Funk. Terry Trafton. Tanya Jonna Ford. Her sound's not working, but she did turn on her camera. Randy Benbrook.
Present.
Chip Tuzinski.
Okay, thank you. There are no changes that I know of on the agenda, so can I get an approval of the agenda as published?
Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda or the agenda as published.
Second.
All those in favor say, or all those in favor?
Roll call.
Roll call.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's what I was.
I was zoning out. Sorry.
We're good.
Can we get a roll call
Mark
vote?
Hitchens.
Yes.
Cinda Rader.
Yes.
Jake Lovelace.
Yes.
Dana Arth.
Yes.
Tanya Jonna Ford.
Still audio issues?
No, we can hear you now.
Okay, thanks.
And Randy Benbrook.
Yes.
Okay, so we've approved the agenda, and now is the time for public comments. If we have any comments pertaining to anything outside of the applications we have here tonight? I see none, so we will go on to the consent agenda. We have one item tonight. It's application 2023-5684, approval of the May 25th, 2023 Planning Commission minutes. Can I get a motion for that?
Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda as published.
Second.
Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Mark Hitchens.
Yes.
Cinda Rader.
Yes.
Jake Lovelace.
Yes.
Dana Arth.
Yes.
Tanya Jonna Ford.
Yes.
Randy Benbrook.
Yes.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to public hearings. Our first application is public hearing application PL 2023-079, special use permit, renewal for automotive sales and major automotive repair, Instant Auto, 2151 Northeast Independence Avenue, Instant Auto applicant. Anyone wishing to give testimony or comments about the issue or about this application, please stand and be sworn at this time. Okay. Now it's time for the applicant presentation. Can you please state your name and address for the record?
I'm Sheila Meyer, and I live over on 29304 East Pink Hill Road in Green Valley, Missouri.
Okay, thank you. You may begin your presentation.
Well, I'm an owner of Instant Credit Auto Sales over in Lee Summit, and I just am here to get a special use permit.
Okay, all right, thank you. And I'll let staff give their presentation at this time. You can sit down.
Good evening, Hector Soto, Junior, Senior Planner. I'd like to enter into the record Exhibit A, list of exhibits 1 through 14.
Okay, Exhibit A listed 1 through 14, noted and entered into the record.
So tonight's application is for a special use permit renewal for an SUP that was originally granted in 2013 in the month of May at 2151 Northeast Independence Avenue for Instant Auto. So to orient you to the site, if you're not familiar with it, the property generally sits at the northwest corner of Colburn Road and I-470. To the immediate south is Subaru. Off the screen across this detention basin lot. To the north is Volkswagen. There's a newer dealership here that recently opened, MoDOT facility, and other government offices are located further to the south and to the west. So the site itself, in whole, is approximately 4.7 acres. It does have CP2 zoning. The building that sits on the property is slightly under 15,000 square feet. When the project was originally proposed, it was constructed in phases. So there's a breakdown of parking over here that shows that for the site as a whole, as it currently sits, there's 144 parking spaces required. There are 410 parking spaces, which is inclusive of display area, customer parking, and employee parking. A way to kind of differentiate where there's kind of a breakdown here of the original site and the expansion site that occurred in 2017. So the darker asphalt that you can see, that's kind of outlined here and excludes that far northwest corner, was part of the original approval, which originally contained about 300 parking spaces. And then about 4 years later, there were an additional 110 spaces that were constructed at this far northwest corner. Originally, these were two separate lots with the intent that there might be a second future smaller dealership or perhaps a second building for this facility. But 4 years after the approval of SUP, an additional display area was constructed here at that northwest corner. So for those that aren't familiar with the building, the image on your upper left displays the north facade, which would be here. So the north facade would be here. This would be the east facade that's facing I-470. And if we go to the upper right image, this facade here on the left side of that particular image would be facing Independence Avenue or west. And this would be the south-facing facade where all the bays are. Lower left-hand image would be a view coming into the site off of Independence Avenue. There is a single point of access. The entrance is, well, as you can see on the image on the right, which would be kind of a blow-up or close-up of this image. The entrance is identified with the monument sign right there on the south side of the entrance. So at the time that the special use permit was originally approved 10 years ago, there were two modifications that were granted. The first one being a modification to the 10-foot display area setback from all property lines. And at the time, what was granted were approval for 6-foot parking lot / display area setbacks from the north property line, which would be all along here, and the south property line, which would sit around here. So those were approved. The site was constructed accordingly. So as part of this application, we're just asking for a modification for continuation of that existing condition. Second modification was granted to the requirement or the restriction against any fencing forward of the building between the building itself and the street. Modifications were granted back in 2013 to allow for two areas that sit a little bit more internal to the parking lot for vehicle inventory security purposes. And if I go back to a couple screens, you'll be able to see a little bit that it's open fencing. It's aluminum or stainless steel fencing, so from the road it's not visible. So it's pretty inconspicuous. You know, again, as part of this application, a modification is being requested to continue that existing condition. So under this existing CP2 zoning, automotive sales and major automotive repair are allowed uses with approval of a special use permit. The original special use permit was granted for a period of 10 years, and the recommendation is for an additional 10-year renewal to maintain consistency with past practice by City Council on special use permit renewals. When staff does evaluate special use permit renewals, we do conduct, well, for any application, we do conduct site visits. In the case of special use permits, we make sure that when we go on site that they are continuing to be in compliance with any conditions approved or any conditions included in any previously special use approval. In this case, we did conduct a site visit and we found that there were no violations of zoning. On the zoning side or property maintenance side, nor has there been history of any complaints been filed on the property. I did want to point out that as part of this application, there was no expansion of the facility, no building improvements, no site improvements at this time that are proposed with the application. So there are 3 conditions of approval, the first one being for recommendation for a 10-year extension period, and the second 2 that capture the existing modifications that are continued for the continuation of the existing conditions. So with that, I will yield to any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. So I guess we will start with Mark. Do you have any questions?
Just one, and this will be for staff and probably pretty easy to answer. Why was it only 10? Was that just because of past practices? Was that based off of any financing of the applicant at the time?
Are you asking why was 10 the original? From what I recall, the applicant back 10 years ago did request a 20-year time period to match up with financing. It was just ultimately City Council's decision at that time to reduce staff's recommendation from a 20-year time period as requested to a 10-year period.
Okay, thank you. A couple of questions for the applicant. She's back there. Thanks, Hector. Great job. Hi. So 10 years ago, you requested 20 years, and it looks like we're on the second half of that. And that's usually for the financing purposes behind this. With the 10-year on this modification, what we're looking at is with these special use permits, usually, what needs to be done to the property. That's usually what I look at here. The only thing I can say, the facility looks great. I love the signage. I'm aware of your location and the business and how we want the city to be shaped up with our plans that we've made in the past. One thing, looking at the pavement that goes through there, would you be open to any condition on the pavement being redone, or maybe that's in your plans and I just don't know about it? Can you speak to that?
We have done some pavement replacement because it's an ongoing thing that we have to deal with. We have done quite a bit of updating it and changing it and fixing it up, but we have never done it. We've done it in segments because of there's so many cars and just to stay open for business.
Right.
So we have tried to definitely make improvements on our pavement over the last 10 years.
Would you be open to any conditions on that, to the repavement being done over the 10 years, or 10-year time period, or any time period?
Entire, wasn't it this?
Not all at the same time, obviously. I want you to stay in business while this goes
Right,
on, but
of course.
certain conditions can be put on you during this period with
okay.
a special use permit. Okay, and it was staff's recommendation for 10 years. Is that what you're looking at too? Is that what you would like, is 10 years?
Well, we'd like more. We don't want to go
Obviously.
anywhere.
But is there anything tied to that? Is there a reason behind
No,
that at all?
not at all. No.
Got
we-
the answer I was looking for through
Yeah,
there.
we wanted 20 the first time.
And this'll square out that 20, right? There's no problems
will.
with that? Okay.
Yeah, if we can
Thank-
have more.
Yeah, probably not. If there's no specific
You
reason
heard to
in there.
ask.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Ms. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Rader?
No questions, Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Lovelace?
Question for staff about the fencing that's out there. So I think the modification said decorative fencing, I think is what it said. Can we, I guess, get a little bit more specific? The fencing that they have there right now looks like it's nice, and it is, as you mentioned, discreet. Can we just insert in there something that it needs to be comparable to the fencing of the date that we're approving this, or something along those lines? And maybe that's a question for David.
So just to be clear, so they're not asking for any additional fencing?
Understood.
Right.
I'm asking that we, I guess, get a little bit more specific with the fencing that we are allowing.
Oh, I
Because
see.
you have it characterized, I believe, as decorative, which I would agree, it is decorative fencing. I just thought, hey, the fencing that they have there right now, in my opinion, looks nice, and it is discreet, and I would prefer that it remain that versus something else that might also be characterized decorative in the future. But also decorative that's 10 feet high versus the 5 feet tall stuff, or the 6 feet tall stuff that they have there. Just trying to box that in a little bit more, if that makes sense.
So just to make sure I'm following what you're saying, are you proposing to add an additional condition to approval, or modify one of the 3?
Yeah, I believe it's the third condition, and what I'm asking is to modify that condition to the effect of stating that it's going to be comparable to what exists there today.
So
Any fencing in the future, that it can't be changed up from what is there today.
I'm looking at the three conditions.
I know I saw something in the reading that characterized it as, and it might be in the staff letter.
Sorry,
Yeah, it's
bear
in-
with me. I was looking at the staff report, not the ordinance, so I'm pulling up the ordinance now. Okay, let's try this. Yeah, so I think what you could do is add language to the end of the condition that says, as currently installed on the property today.
Okay.
Does that satisfy you? Okay.
Yep, something like that. Thank you.
Commissioner Benbrook?
I have no questions, thank you.
Can't see her, but Tanya, did you have any questions?
No, no, thank you.
All right, so with that, do we have any comments from the commission? I'll start here.
I have no comments at this time, thank you.
Commissioner Lovelace?
The only comment I would have is just seeing if other people agree, if other council members agree, or council members, sorry, if other commission members agree that we want to have fencing that's comparable to what's there today, or if that matters to anybody else, just kind of, that's what I would toss out there.
You have a comment on that?
I have a reply to that. I actually think Commissioner Lovelace's statement is perfect and right on. If we're going to add that on there, I like the way it looks. Let's keep it that way. And so if we're going to have that statement and there's another condition on there, let's make sure that it stays that way. I know we had an issue one time about the fencing at a self-storage facility here. And I was here on the front one on that and got continued, and I wasn't here on the back end. And we weren't specific enough, and what I had hoped would happen did not happen over there. So would definitely like to box that in, as Commissioner Lovelace said, a little bit better. So I am for that amendment in there.
Okay. Commissioner Jana Ford?
No comments, but I agree. I like kind of wrapping it up into a nice, neat little bow.
Okay, thank you. I would say I agree with that specification on that modification. It looks nice the way it is. So who is?
Oh, one moment, Ms. Chair, if I could make another point up here as well. It looks like we have our council chiming in.
Amy Nassif, Deputy Director of Development. Just wanted to, I had some language I could offer for an amendment to the item number 3, that a modification shall be granted to the requirement that no fencing extend beyond the main building to allow a parking area with decorative fencing as currently installed.
That is a mouthful. Commissioner Lovelace, you got that? He's smarter than me, so he's probably okay there.
Does that cover it? Thank you.
But still in the moment of discussion, first of all, I'd like to thank the applicant for having a wonderful business in Lee Summit. Always great to see the businesses here as well. Bring up the point, did we want to make any amendment in there to the pavement of the parking area? Or am I the only one who thinks that should be on there? And if not, I'm not married to it, so I'm okay. But for discussion on the commission.
And can I say something really quick? On the pavement, I just want to say that it sounds like the owner is constantly working on that. I know how that is with parking lots. You have to be maintaining them all the time. So I'm assuming that that's what you're going to continue to do, is continue to, because you want your business to look good. Yeah, okay, thank you.
I would actually echo exactly what you're saying. In my experience, useful life on those is roughly 8 years, and so it is something that gets turned over more than likely, more often even in the 10-year period that we're granting this SUP, so.
Well, then I'll just withdraw it, and Jake has a parking lot, so we'll just go with that. But it sounds great. Once again, thank you to the applicant. Wonderful, wonderful idea. Wonderful to have your business in the city. Thank you.
Are you ready, to make a motion?
Ms. Chair, I move to recommend approval of application PL 2023079, special use permit renewal for automotive sales and major automotive repair, Instant Auto, 2151 Northeast Independent Avenue, Instant Auto applicant. I move to do so with, subject to staff conditions 1 through 3, with the third being modified to, a modification shall be granted to the requirement that no fencing extend beyond the main building to allow a parking area with decorative fencing forward of the building so as to provide security for vehicle inventory as currently installed.
Okay. Can I get a second on that?
Second.
We don't have to do two votes on that, do we?
No, just one
Okay,
vote.
okay. All right, can we get a roll call vote?
Mark Hitchens,
Yes.
Cinda Rader,
Yes.
Jake Lovelace.
Yes.
Dana Arth,
Yes.
Tanya Jana Ford,
Yes.
Randy Benbrook.
Yes.
Okay, so with that, the motion has passed. And we'll move on to the second public hearing. Anyone wishing to give testimony, please stand and be sworn at this time. Okay. With that, we're opening up, I think I forgot to read that first. Application PL 2023-011, rezoning from CP2 to PMIX and preliminary development plan, Discovery Park, Zone 1, approximately 39.42 acres, located at the northwest corner of Northeast Colburn Road and Northeast Douglas Street. Intrinsic Development LLC applicant. And Hector, are you doing the staff presentation? Oh. I did the same thing last.
Good evening.
Could you state your name and address for the record, please?
Absolutely. My name is Wesley Fields. My address is 1200 Main Street, Kansas City, Missouri, 64105. It's the law firm of Brian Cave, Leighton Paisner. I'm legal counsel to the developer Discovery Park, and here to speak on the larger context of the project. So Olson, Representative Olson will be here to discuss the specific application here. I wanted to provide context for this project in a larger development in the area, if you don't mind. So this is part of a larger development project that's been presented to the City Council in the context of requesting incentives, specifically tax increment financing and community improvement and community improvement district funding, as well as hotel tax redirection to fund a project that will be a 4-phase project to be constructed over approximately a 10-year period. You see on this map before you the 265 acres that the developer Discovery Park has acquired in connection with this mixed-use project. As I mentioned, it's going to be developed in phases. This is the larger aerial view, again, of how we intend to do a phased project. The first portion of the phase is in pink. That's Zone 1, or what we call Redevelopment Project Area 1. Immediately south of that in the light blue is Phase 2. To the left or to the west of that is Phase 3, and then in yellow is Phase 4. So again, this is what we're talking about today is the southern portion, frankly, of Phase 1, that pink portion. She'll have greater detail, obviously, in connection with that. So what does this project consist of in its totality? It's a commercial development project of about 668,000 square feet of retail, office, entertainment, and hospitality space. That includes, on the hospitality side, 2 hotels, both a Marriott and a Hilton development, 230 hotel rooms amongst the 2 of those 2 hotels. In addition to that, it will include approximately 2,700 luxury multifamily units, along with approximately, should not be 1 million, it's actually, it's 1,460 structured parking stalls. What you have now is an aerial view of Phase 1. So again, the northern portion of this Phase 1 has already been approved by this body as well as by the City Council in July of 2019. That provides for the apartment, about 600 apartment units on that northern phase of that. What you'll see, what you hear about later in this presentation is a southern portion of that Phase 1 or redevelopment project area 1. So in total, it provides for 88,400 square feet of commercial space, approximately 1,185 luxury multifamily units, 630 parking stalls, and about 230 rooms for the 2 hotels that I mentioned earlier. The plan that went before the City Council, the TIF plan that went before the City Council, has this exact same project area, and the elements of this project area are within it. There's a slight deviation in that there's approximately 10% more commercial development and about 10% less in terms of structured parking stalls. It's the only distinction between what you see in this application versus what was in the TIF plan itself. Again, the TIF plan talks about approximate numbers, so we believe the approximate numbers that we have here before you today is consistent with what's in the TIF plan that's been approved by the City Council. As to the residential development that's reflected on this slide, as I mentioned earlier, the northern portion of this Phase 1 has already been approved by this body as well as by the City Council. That again accounts for approximately 600 of the multifamily units. The remaining 585 on the southern portion will be part of the applications being presented to you today. In addition to that, the hotel rooms and the commercial development and the parking is relatively the same as was presented to the City Council in its TIF plan. The schedule in connection with this phase is to commence, it already has commenced in May of 2023. It'll be completed in October of 2026. Immediately south of that, I shared with you on the larger aerial view the second phase of this development project. You see it here highlighted on this slide. For this particular phase, there is no residential development at all. It's all commercial, 126,500 square feet of commercial development, mixed use, a development in terms of retail as well as entertainment in that space and office. Phase 2 would commence in August of 2024 and be completed on approximately October of 2026. Phase 3, the next phase of this development, immediately west of Phase 2, you'll see the canal feature that sits in the middle of that, somewhat of a unique feature to this development project. This has more intensity in terms of the development on the commercial side, approximately 225,000 square feet of commercial development. The residential is about 332 multifamily units. That would begin in May of 2024, and it would conclude in December of 2027. The last phase of this large development project is Phase 4, and you see it depicted on the map in front of you. That again calls for another 234,000 square feet of commercial development, another 1,220 multifamily units, and about 830 structured parking stalls to support that development. That would commence in March of 2028 and would conclude in April of 2031. The project in its totality is approximately $950 million in terms of total cost. The developers bring in about $750 million private equity and debt to this project and is seeking the balance in terms of incentives. Just to give you a context of the size and the volume of this project, if you were to ask David Bouchek, who presented this to the City Council, this was likely, 4 to 5 times the size of any single development project the city has seen to date. I think that's impressive, and it's not only impressive, but it's a testament, I think, of the commitment that this developer has to the site. Normally, you don't have developers that are able to accumulate this size of a lot and then be able to come up with an orchestrated, comprehensive, cohesive development scheme, which is obviously what you have here. One of the benefits, or some of the benefits that we've talked to the City Council about in connection with this plan that may have been persuasive in their approval of it, was the connectivity that this plan had to the city's Ignite plan, which I'm sure you all are obviously familiar with, the comprehensive plan for the city. There's 5 elements that we identified as we went through the Ignite plan, and we tried to ensure that the consistency of our development plan was in line with the comprehensive plan for the city of Lee Summit. You all likely don't know, but I'm uniquely familiar with Ignite. I serve on Lee Summit's park board, and so I remember participating in some of the discussions as this was moving along. So I was excited to see that this project, frankly, was in line with a lot of the elements that are reflected in Ignite. Obviously, the quality of life was a huge portion of this vision for this development project, and that it supports the life, work, and play all in one area. We were very focused at the very beginning of this plan to ensure that it also supported the school district. We negotiated with the school district early on in the process to ensure that 25% of the pilots generated from this project would accrue to the benefit of the school district. Not only the school district, but actually all the taxing jurisdictions. We started with the school district and then extended it to every taxing jurisdiction. So the tax incentive benefits all taxing jurisdictions in Lee Summit. We wanted a project that was strong neighborhood and housing choice. The luxury multi-family version of these units, which will be described in greater detail by Olson, was also consistent, we think, with what Ignite had in mind and had envisioned. The economic resiliency, we also thought, was a factor that was a plus for our project. Typically, the mixed-use concept does that. So although you may have residential living there in the evening, during the day, it's occupied on the commercial side. So you'll see the tiered structure of the development with retail and commercial on the bottom floors of some of these buildings, and then residential on the top. That activates that particular area 24/7, and so that was designed. And we think that attributes, I think, also to the economic resiliency of this development project. In addition to that, this site doesn't currently have sewer connectivity to it. And so that was a major feature to actually get this site moving, is to provide that connectivity of water and sewer. In addition to that, a large portion of the infrastructure that's supporting this development will be privately maintained by the developer, obviously up to and likely exceeding whatever the code expectations and requirements are of the city. Lastly, it's remediating a blighted area. This is one of the targeted areas that the city has identified for economic development and growth. And with respect to the blight findings that were made in connection with the TIF plan that was submitted and approved by the City Council and the TIF Commission, we obviously seek to remedy a lot of the blight within the area. Lastly, land use and community design. We believe also that this provides a high-end, mixed-use, walkable infill development that we believe promotes the vision of Ignite. Madam Chair, that concludes my presentation. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions about the larger development project, but I'll defer the rest of the presentation to Olson to give you more specifics about this application.
Okay, thank you. Will you please state your name and address for the record?
Yes. Good evening, Chairwoman and members of the Commission. My name is John Erpelding with Olson, located at 1301 Burlington, North Kansas City, Missouri. I'm going to, first I'll say Olson is, we've been involved in this project for a while, and we've been providing services on this project that includes surveying, geotechnical engineering, environmental engineering, master planning, landscape architecture, civil engineering, and traffic engineering. I'm going to try not to repeat much of what Wesley touched on here, but there might be a couple things that I might double up on here as soon as I can get this going. This is an image. It kind of gives you that holistic view again, but I wanted to highlight the area that we're requesting tonight is the Zone 1 called the Village at Discovery Park, highlighted or outlined in red. I want to just start with some brief case history and then the request for tonight. So it was actually back in about 2009, 2010, I and others worked with Mike Van Buskirk on with Unity Village and the city to annex all this property from Unity Village into the city. And so it's really exciting to be here today and tonight and you know, being a part of the applicant team on such a large, exciting project for the city. Now, as Wesley mentioned, in 2019, the developer, Intrinsic Development, brought forward the apartment plan, which north of Zone 1, at the time it was called Aria Apartments, as well as zoning of the property that we're discussing tonight. So at that time, this was all PMIX zoning. When it was annexed, everything default was PMIX. We came in and, sorry about that. We rezoned the apartment piece up here to RP4, and we rezoned this piece to CP2 because at the time in 2019, it was really just more of a standard commercial development. It was a concept plan. We didn't do a preliminary development plan, but it was a concept plan. And it was just more, you know, to try to generate some, you know, some excitement with some potential developers on, you know, commercial. So since that time, Intrinsic Development purchased all the rest of this property and came forward with this vision. So what we're requesting tonight is a rezoning from that CP2 that was done in 2019 back to PMIX because this is truly a mixed-use development. And then also approval of a preliminary development plan for Zone 1. Before I move on to the other slides, I do want to say that we reviewed the staff report. We're in full agreement with all the conditions. And also want to thank all of city staff members who we've worked with on this project, and there are several of them. You know, a project of this size, you know, there's always a lot of moving parts, and it makes it even more critically important to have a lot of good coordination between the applicant team and city staff, and we feel grateful that we've really had that on this project, and I especially want to thank Don Bell for making sure that we're all well coordinated on this. This slide zooms in more on the village, and this is the 39 acres. I'll get to some other slides here. The next slide will show more detail. On this one, I want to focus on some of the site engineering improvements and point those out. So number one, stormwater management, of course, with any development is a big thing to take care of. What you see, you can see the blue. It's going to be a pond, a wet pond. It's always going to stay a wet basin feature. That's going to handle all the runoff from the future apartments to the north of this, and also all of the runoff from this site, this Zone 1 site. We're going to clean the water up with other stormwater best management practice measures throughout the site before it gets to the pond. And then the pond itself also helps clean up the water, and sediment settles and trash and other things kind of get settled out before any of that water goes downstream and eventually gets into the Unity Lake and then further downstream from there. So we're really excited to have this. This is a core piece of this phase of development, is to have this nice pond amenity that's going to have other things around trails and other green space and pool area. The second part would be, again, with any large development, traffic and public street improvements, right? So I think, as everybody knows, Colburn Road is a city project that's getting underway here real soon, and honestly, that's been a big catalyst for being able to do a project like this, is to have the city put that money into that public infrastructure. Now on Colburn Road, this project is going to require even more improvements on top of what the city's going to do. So we will have turn lanes. We'll have turn lanes on Douglas. We'll be putting curb and gutter and sidewalk on Douglas along this frontage of the property. I also want to mention that we are also in agreement with all the conditions listed in the traffic impact form. Now with interior streets, I would say that's all the interior streets on this development are going to be private, and they're going to be privately maintained. We also have a lot of proposed utility improvements for this site. We have a mix of private utilities and public utilities, storm sewers, sanitary sewers, and water mains. I'd like to mention, we do have one modification request that's going to be for your consideration tonight, but I will let Hector actually talk about that probably in more detail. And we also have one design waiver related to the stream buffer where our detention wet basin is going to go. That has been approved by the city engineer. And then I also want to say that we're already moving forward at risk, obviously, since this has to be approved hopefully by Planning Commission and City Council, but we're already moving forward with a final plat application that's going to be submitted tomorrow for this site. And we are almost finished with land disturbance mass grading plans for this site. And then we'll shortly be, here soon, we'll be submitting full infrastructure plans for all the private drives and all the public and private utilities for this site. So we're ready to go. The developer is ready to go on this. This is a nicer depiction of this area that I want to show you. We have 13 proposed lots plus 2 tracks. The 2 tracks would be the detention tract on the north side, and then also the private streets are all going to be within a tract. A total of about 39 acres. As Wesley mentioned, there's going to be apartment units within this phase, a total of about, well, not about, there will be 585 apartment units, and those will be spread across multiple buildings on this site. There will be 80,400 square feet of commercial space, including office, retail, and restaurant. It will be the 230 hotel rooms that Wesley mentioned will be with the 2 hotels all in Zone 1, the village here. That'll be on Lot 2 and then Lot 3. And I'll get into more detail. You'll see some depictions on each lot here soon. So this is really a true mixed-use project, and you can see also that there's a central green space that will connect, pedestrians through the site up to the amenity area where you have a nice pool, you have the pond, you have walking trails. And we believe that really reinforces the live, work, play vision for this project. So in the next several slides, we'll give you a flavor of the proposed architecture and the massing and the uses for each lot. Start with Lot 1. Now, what I'll say is that all of the buildings on this project, as indicated in the design guidelines that have been submitted as well, are going to have primary building materials that are going to be consistent and cohesive. Those materials will be brick, stone masonry, there'll be some fiber cement board, some aluminum, and storefront glazing. So this first building on Lot 1, this is looking, from the corner of Douglas and Colburn, looking, at the southeast corner of the building, where the intention is to have a 2-story building with office and retail, and then a restaurant on the corner. Lot 2 would be one of the hotels. Brian Maynor is here with the developer, and he'll, on the last 2 slides, he can talk more about some of the tenants. You can see it right on here, Home 2 Suites. That's the one here for Lot 2. We have 4-story hotel with 107 rooms. Lot 3 would be the other hotel. That would be a 4-story hotel with 123 rooms. And I'll just pause here. I don't want to go too quick, so I'll just take a couple seconds here so you can kind of, again, so you can see the nice architecture and the cohesive nature of all these buildings with all the same materials. This perspective shows Lot 5 and Lot 3 as you enter the site from Colburn. So this is, looking right down the middle of the site, looking north from Colburn Road. Lot 5 will consist of a 1st floor retail with 2nd floor apartments, 20 units. Again, Lot 3 was what I just showed you before. That'll be a hotel. As we move over to the southeast corner of the site, or southwest corner, I'm sorry, and as you're kind of looking north through the development, you can see this was sort of a later add through this process that we added probably maybe a month and a half, 2 months ago. Really excited to have the opportunity to have an animal hospital and a pet spa here. these would be the elevation views of the animal hospital and the pet spa. Now, as you get into the center of this site, we'll have, you know, lots 8, 9, and 10. The one directly to the right of lot 8, I think that's lot 4. It's basically the same as lot 8, so I don't have a view of that, but it would look a lot like lot 8. And I think the next slide shows a little bit more of lot 8 as well. But that lot 8 building you see in the plan will consist of a 3-story. That'll be a 3-story building, first floor retail, second floor apartments. Lot 9 and 10, those will be 4-story buildings, have a little bit more massing to them. Those will include commercial end caps, apartments, quite a bit of apartments, 290 on lot 9, 292 on lot 10, and also parking garage structures. So on the parking, we have ample parking for this whole development. It's going to consist of a big portion of that's going to be in the parking garages, but we have, you know, a lot of, as you can see, a lot of surface parking too. So it's not, it doesn't, you know, look like we didn't want to have it just be all surface parking. It's kind of nice to have some of that structured parking incorporated into the buildings. And there'll be shared parking agreements throughout all the lots. Another view of lot 9 and 10. This would be, if you're in this part of this little roundabout here in the center of the site, looking kind of up towards this central green space, that's what you're seeing. That's the view. And this view and this perspective would be if you're kind of up here right at the south end of this green space and you're looking southwest towards lot 8 at this corner of the building. That's this corner right here. Now as we move over to the west side of the site, we do have some apartments, just standalone apartment buildings, 4 stories. This building, well, both of these buildings up here will be 80 units. This lot 11, I believe, has, you know, some smaller units, a mix of different bedrooms, which Brian could probably tell you more if you have questions on that. And then up the north end of the site, it's a little bit larger building, but these are going to have, this 80 units on here. I think these are probably going to have more of the larger, more luxury units in it. And also the building, these apartment buildings will look just like the future apartments to the north of this site, the previously approved plan. Whenever that comes forward, we'll make sure that they look just like these. So here's a view of the amenities at the very north of lot 9. You can see in the rendering kind of how you have some of that building and that architecture here on the north side facing the amenities. You know, that's going to consist of the leasing space and a fitness center, clubhouse, coming right out onto the large pool area with cabanas, and then you have your pond and walking trail. We also worked, you know, with Mr. Eden and made sure that we are incorporating all the appropriate requirements for fire truck, fire access. So that's, you know, we're able to do something nice and decorative here that looks like a large trail. It's also for the fire truck. Now I'm going to let Brian come up and finish with these last 2 slides.
Hello, my name is Brian Maynard. I'm with Representative Intrinsic Development. Our address is 3622 Endeavor Avenue, Suite 101, Columbia, Missouri. So to follow with what Wesley and John presented for the rest of our slides, this was more of a representation just to prove to you that our Town Place Suites and Home 2 franchises have been signed. They've been committed. Franchise fees have been paid. The other infill office location, we actually will be moving our corporate office to this development once the buildings are built. We also have a Pizza and Brews, a coffee house, and a grab-and-go market that we are owner developed, and we have a food and restaurant tour here in the Kansas City market that will manage the operations of those. And then we also have committed this week signed franchise agreements with Yoga 6 and BFT from a wellness perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry if I may, there was one slide I had a couple more things to add, if that's okay. On this one here, I just wanted to touch on the pedestrian experience. So, it was really important to the development team, and Olson, worked with them on making sure that we created a lot of good connectivity, have a nice enhanced pedestrian experience by creating walkways and street crossings within the development that are going to have decorative pavement. There'll be a lot of site furnishings such as bike racks, trash receptacles, benches, street trees. There'll be decorative light poles. We'll make sure there's uniform landscaping that has seasonal interest. And there will also be nice monumentation and wayfinding throughout the development.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Hector, are you ready for the staff presentation?
Hector Soto Jr., Senior Planner. I'd like to enter into the record Exhibit A, list of exhibits 1 through 20.
Exhibit A, 1 through 20, noted and entered into the record.
So I'll recap some of what's already been discussed by the applicant team. So I did want to kind of start at the kind of 20, 30,000 foot level, just to kind of hammer the point home as to where it is that this, if you want to call it the first puzzle piece, if you want to call it the larger development of this general area is located and how it relates to everything else that surrounds it. So as has been stated, we're looking in total, when it's all said and done, we are looking at around 270 acres or so. Zone 1, you can see here, is in the vicinity of about makes up about 60, 65 acres of that. This line here demarcates the approximate location of the separation between the ARIA project and this Zone 1 application that is before you as part of tonight's proceedings. So outlined in yellow is the actual subject property that's the focus of tonight's proceedings. So to kind of orient everyone to the site, this area here that doesn't have any zoning designation, that is outside of the corporate city of Lee Summit, the corporate limits of Lee Summit. To the north, in this kind of somewhat goldenrod color, you do have the ARIA site that's already received approvals, entitlements back in 2019. To the west, to the east, generally speaking as a whole, you're talking about most of that property being taken up by the municipal airport. There's approximately a quarter mile or so separation from the southern limits of that, of the nearest runway to the closest point of the subject site. To the site is to the south across Colburn Road is existing R1 property and some PMX property that will be part of the future puzzle pieces that'll come through as part of separate applications, separate public hearings in front of the Planning Commission, City Council. But again, we're focusing tonight on the yellow boundary that's composed of about 40 acres. So I'll recap some of what's already been stated. In total, this particular piece is going to encapsulate 13 total lots and 2 common area tracts, one common area tract being the retention basin, and the second common area tract is going to make up all of the private internal drives that will serve the site. In total, between the commercial and residential and the combination commercial and residential buildings, we're looking at in this zone approximately 300,000 square feet of building. There'll be, as has been mentioned, 585 total dwelling units spread out between lots 11 and 12, which are just standalone apartments, and lots 8, 4, 9, and 10 that are hatched here, which are the combination apartment and commercial uses on the ground floor. The perimeter lots are going to be at least as currently proposed, are going to be standalone commercial lots, with lots 2 and 3 being the hotel uses. The range of, from a building height standpoint, we are looking at a range of single-story buildings to four-story, although really with the single-story buildings, we're looking at lots 6, 7, and 13. 13 could be a future restaurant. 6 and 7 are the, 6 is the animal hospital, and 7 is the pet spa. To serve the entire facility or the entire development in Zone 1, a total of approximately 1,600 parking spaces are being proposed. That'll be a combination of parking garages, which you primarily see here in the core in lots 9, 10, 8, and 4. Although lot 3 will have one parking garage associated with that hotel use. The rest of it's going to be served by surface parking. In the core of the development, you can see that most of that parking is kind of grouped in, I guess you would call it more like pods, where the buildings do provide a lot of that pedestrian-friendly environment where they are pushed up against the spine roads, that north, south, and east-west spine roads, so that all these parking spaces, which in part will be shared, are easily or more easily, yeah, that sounds right, are more easily accessible by the surrounding buildings that surround each of those parking pods. But as has been mentioned throughout the development, there are a number of pedestrian ways, trails that serve for that interconnectivity that's critical to these mixed-use developments. As has been mentioned, generally speaking, the overall aesthetic is going to be brick buildings with fiber cement and some aluminum accents and glazing. As has been mentioned, a lot of the buildings, for the most part, are pulled up, and you can see here that illustrating the combination of the pedestrian ways and landscape, private streets and sidewalks to provide some human scale and makes them for a much more inviting experience. Here's just the black and white version of a landscape plan that was previously provided, but here you can see that you do have the tree-lined private streets. You do have them in the required 20-foot landscape buffer along the public rights-of-way. And, again, you've got some landscape medians and pedestrian ways serving the north-south spine that divides that 30-acre property. The modification request that was mentioned by Mr. Erpelding has to do with the separation between uses with outdoor exercise areas associated with pet motels, training, or any similar type of use, and their separation from any residential use or residential zoning district. So in this case, both the pet daycare and the animal hospital will have enclosed exercise areas. In the case of the pet spa, they're fenced, solid fenced. Exercise area will be on the north side of Lot 7, and for the animal hospital, it'll be on the west side, furthest away from the adjoining residential and commercial uses. More specifically to Lot 7, at its closest point, we are looking at a separation of about 127 feet or so between that building and the combination residential commercial building on Lot 8. As I mentioned, the minimum separation requirement is 200 feet, but in this case, the point of the intent of these mixed-use developments is to provide a lot of the services that that are more catered to the residents of that area. So as a master plan community, we are looking at the proximity of these uses to the residents to being critical to the success of the development. So in this case, they are looking at about an 80-foot variance or modification to that separation. Based on the architectural plans that we have seen, you can see here that there's an entrance to kind of tuck under garage. There do not appear, based on the architectural plans, any kind of balconies or such that will be on this side of Lot 8 that would be facing or that would be close to this exercise area. And the same would apply to Lot, I believe 11, it is the one that's due north of this. So we believe there to be ample separation to mitigate any negative externalities from the outdoor exercise areas like noise, smell, those types of things. I did want to bring to your attention, and it's mentioned in the staff letter, that there is a modification to the design and construction manual associated with this project. Now, as far as tonight's proceedings, there is no action that's required by the Planning Commission or City Council on this waiver request. It is something that has already been in accordance with the design and construction manual. It's a request that's already presented to the city engineer, reviewed and approved here on May 26, 2023. So just to kind of go over a little bit, you see about 10 acres that's here in this color that I would characterize as lapis lazuli. You can see about 10 acres here. The dashed line here is the boundaries of the stream buffer. So there's a natural drainage way that flows from southwest to northwest, from southeast to northwest. So about 10.3 acres of that is being partially enclosed, and one of the improvements is going to be that retention basin. So in order to accommodate for a number of site improvements, including stormwater management and just the overall ability to develop the site, it is requiring that a waiver be submitted and has been approved. So there will be a number of BMPs that will be implemented throughout the development and within this area here to accommodate and offset the impacts of the removal of or elimination of the stream buffer area through here. Part of which will be about an additional 5 acres further downstream here, denoted in this kind of rose color. On either side of the stream buffer, there's going to be in total about 5.2 acres of enhanced stream buffer area that's provided to help kind of offset and mitigate any of those environmental and wildlife impacts from the elimination of these 10 acres upstream. One of the conditions of approval references the traffic impact analysis and certain road improvements that are recommended as part of that document. Mr. Erpelding has already indicated that the applicant is amenable to those conditions. So just generally speaking, I'll just kind of summarize. Here you can see that there are basically 5 drives that serve Zone 1. And just generally speaking, there's going to be some restriping of turn lanes on Drive 1 and Drive 2, which are actually more off-site improvements associated that'll be a part of the ARIA project. But the impacts of this development kind of do spill over and trigger these improvements that are at this point just limited to some restriping. There will be some construction of turn lanes at Drives 3, 4, and 5 on the site of the actual Zone 1. And just in compliance with our unapproved road policy, the applicant is required to improve Northeast Douglas Street from Colburn Road to this northern boundary to an urban standard per the policy. There will be, as future phases or zones are approved south of Colburn Road, traffic impact study will have to be updated as we go along to reflect any changes of the uses as they're proposed, and as we further evaluate the impacts of the existing development on the road network. There's also an additional condition that MoDOT requirements for Phase 1 will be addressed at the time of final development plan. So as we evaluated the proposal, we always look at it against the comprehensive plan. So on the right here is an image of the recommended land use plan. And you can see here, denoted with the star is the subject 40 acres, and you can see that the recommended land use under the comp plan, the Ignite comp plan is for mixed use, and this plan is fully in alignment with said recommendation. There are 6 conditions of approval. First one being the modification to the separation from the pet exercise areas to the adjoining residential uses. And 2 and 3 are just standard conditions about how the development must be in compliance with the design standards and preliminary development plan that's been provided. Number 4 being tying this plan approval to TIA improvements. And 5 and 6 are other improvements that are other conditions that will be met at the final development plan stage associated with landscape planning, landscape plan, and some compliance with design and construction manual requirements. So I will yield to any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you, Hector. Do we have any public comments on this application? Okay, I don't see any, so I'm going to move on to the commission with any questions. Commissioner Jana Ford, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions right now.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. I'll start again with Commissioner Kitchens.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. Let's start with city staff. Hector, if you will. A couple of questions for you. We mentioned the MoDOT requirements there at the very end. What are the MoDOT requirements that they have to keep up with? Or are we not focusing on those because it's Colburn Road with the next phase, or how's that going? Oh, there we got roads. Thanks, Hector.
I'll take that one. Susan Berry, City Traffic Engineer. That refers to some of the issues that came up in the traffic study. We didn't get comments back from MoDOT on the traffic study. We got a long list of comments, but they weren't divided into phases, and since we were only reviewing phase 1 at this time, we kind of had to re-meet and try to figure out what exactly they were looking at. And so basically their concern is the northbound right turn lane at Douglas and Colburn. I think it was analyzed as a single right turn lane, and I think ultimate plan, MoDOT would like a dual right turn lane, and so we're kind of working through that right now.
Okay, you may want to stay up here just
Okay.
a million road questions.
Okay.
Because this is a congested intersection as it is, and we're putting a lot of development in here. First off, you know, I'll save it for discussion, but beautiful facility, right? With that intersection right there, is that completely MoDOT's jurisdiction over 470 all the way to the Colburn intersection on Douglas?
No, the intersection of Colburn and Douglas is Lee Summits. About probably halfway between there and 470 ramps, we switched to MoDOT. The reason that we keep that involved is because traffic from the intersection backs into the interchange and vice versa. And so that's why we work closely with them in this area.
And this is on their radar to get moving on quickly, I take it, as we have this development and all these phases coming through. 8 years flies by as far as road construction goes,
Yes.
as you well know.
Yes.
Okay, continuing then down Douglas towards the airport. We all know it turns into basically a single lane road right before it gets to the airport there. I know that we have requirements on the applicant to go ahead and improve both sides of those to an urban requirement. Now, this is past the applicant's developing property, correct? That it turns to one lane?
Yes,
Okay, that's well past that then.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. And airport traffic, I can only imagine will add to this. We'll get letters from people at the airport and things of that nature.
Well, I think the airport's looking forward to, these amenities being there to drive more traffic to the airport.
I was just at the airport the other day, and I would agree completely with that, actually. And I am all for, throw that in discussion, but all for more funding for the airport. Okay, so continue with the roads. Now let's head west. Okay, I'm headed west, and you know my next question. We have how many municipalities before we get to 50? Just Unity Village that we'll have to deal with on that?
Unity Village, and then once you pass over 350, we go into Kansas City.
Okay. Last time we tried putting a development in here, and I'm very proud that we probably have talked to our neighbors about this. We had members from Kansas City, obviously, citizens of Kansas City, excuse me, come in and voice their concerns about it. We don't have any tonight, which is great, but working with Unity Village forward, because I can see that roadway getting very congested and backing into our city limits as well on Colburn, as we'll have a lot of people moving out to 50 out of these facilities on Colburn, basically right turn out of the southern exit, going down through Unity Village off of Colburn into the intersection with the 5350 interchange right there where it turns into Bannister if you cross. We're talking Unity Village, MoDOT, and Kansas City to be involved on these things. I just want some, and I know the answer to this, so just on my weary mind, are we combining our coordinating our efforts with this development in order to make sure that all of the municipalities affected are ready for the influx that will probably happen from this?
And we'll definitely yes with MoDOT. I personally have not had any contact with Unity Village, but moving forward, we definitely will.
Okay, sounds great.
Like I said, we have multiple more phases to get involved.
Sure, and we can't lead, you know, we can only lead a horse to water, right? And we're definitely working with our great partner, Unity Village.
And there's
Great.
been a lot of coordination for the Colburn Road project, too. So I think
Wonderful.
we've got those relationships.
Wonderful, good. Those are all the right answers. Thank you so much. For city staff, still past the roads. Before, when we were looking at developing, well, I guess this would be roads as well, but are we developing both sides of Douglas as it moves up with sidewalks? Because the one side, the other side of the
Yes.
of the road, so they're developing, the developer has agreed to develop both sides with
Yes. with-
sidewalks.
Yeah, in accordance with the unimproved road policy, it will be both sides of the road.
Okay, excellent. 'cause
And
that
part of
came
that
up
was
before.
approved with the ARIA development.
I
And so
remember.
the way it's worded and the conditions might seem a little weird, but it is cohesive for the whole length of phase one.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, I remember that when we brought that up, as a matter of fact. Okay, great. If the applicant, I don't know which one of you guys would like to answer these questions, but you got the team here, so. The Home to Suites hotel that is coming in there, was that the Hampton that owns that? So
It's a Hilton.
it's a Hilton, thank you. I saw it on there and it passed by my head which one it was. Is that a long-term lodging facility?
It is
or-
extended stay.
It's extended stay?
Yep.
Thank you. And the other hotel, the Marriott, that is extended stay
It is
as
also
well?
an extended stay, with the connection to the hospitals on both ends of the development.
Right.
We felt that those are brands that are very strong, that we have franchises for in other markets, is why we continue those brands here.
Glad you brought up other markets.
Yeah.
So my question now is, what other developments have you made that are similar to this development?
We have a development similar to this in Columbia, Missouri, that's roughly 200 acres. Similar concept, hotels, restaurant, multifamily, commercial uses.
Is that one finished, all phases?
It is not 100% finished.
It is not 100%. What percentage would you say it was?
I would say we are probably 60%.
60%. And when was that one began?
We acquired the property in 2009.
2009.
2009, it was a much larger development. In acquisitions of right-of-way, we had a lot of MoDOT right-of-way and concerns because it's actually at an interchange of Highway 63 and Discovery Parkway.
Sounds like an
It
intersection.
took a little bit longer to get through the process of those steps.
Sounds like an intersection very similar to the one we've got here.
Correct.
Okay. How many acres was that then?
Right at 200.
Right at 200 acres. And this one is?
270 total.
Okay, so this one's a little larger.
Yes.
All the phases that we're looking at coming through. Okay. I have some serious concerns with the traffic that's coming through there, but in all honesty, it's a beautiful facility. I mean, we're going to have those concerns no matter what we put in there, in my opinion. I've seen similar facilities out in Lenexa. So I don't want to say to the scale. This is grand, and I don't want to say to this luxury. This is really good.
Thank you.
I like the way it looks. It's beautiful. I do know that some of those facilities have had issues keeping the retail partners in play. And that's a big part of this, the retail partnerships. Refresh my memory. How many open bays did you guys have for retail there?
In this phase, Mike, did we?
Non-rented out, non-leased would be what my question is.
Non-lease in this phase right now, we actually have about, yeah, go ahead if you would, please. Yeah.
Still pretty. Looks great. Cookie place too. Yeah, I saw that.
I'm Mike Van Buskirk. I'm Vice Chairman of Newmark Zimmer.
Do we need an address for him? Point of order, Mr. Chair.
I'll be happy to provide it. Lease
Go
Summit
ahead.
or office, whichever you'd like.
Office is fine.
1220 Washington, Kansas City, Missouri.
Great, thank you, sir.
So as John Erpelding mentioned, we've been working on this project for a long time. So this is really cool to be bringing this for you today and see the images that we've been working on for so long. And let me just address, because I also represent Unity Village and Unity School of Christianity,
Wonderful.
who sold this ground to this developer after a very long process of, first off, getting comfortable with the concept of selling ground. After we put it into Lee Summit, first off, that's question number one, and then going from there to where we are. But One of the reasons we selected this developer was really the quality of what you're seeing here today. And I think for those of you that saw the earlier apartment project when it came through, it was the first time I ever had somebody say, thank you, and I've never seen somebody come forward with quality development like this as far as exterior materials and whatnot. So the other part that's really interesting about this, for this first phase, is I've never had a project where we haven't even, gone vertical yet, or started really moving dirt, and we've had this much activity. So our entire team is working on this, the office team, our retail team, and the spaces that we've got left here, which are highlighted on this slide, we've got 25,000 feet of a combination of ground level, second level space, which that second level space will go office, could be general office, could be medical office. The ground level space could be retail or office. And then that building B, you'll see 13,800. And then building C, we've got the 8,600. Without getting into additional details, I can tell you that we have active prospects on all these spaces. Medical office, some very cool retail concepts, and a lot of activity on a site that we haven't been bringing forward yet, which will be the next phase to the south of this. So our guys on the retail team just got back from the big retail convention in Vegas, which is where a lot of these deals get introduced, and it was really cool to bring this out to them and start talking about this.
So it looks like on here, we're looking, what percentage would you say, about 25% unfilled, unleased at the moment?
Yeah, of our commercial space.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Great. And the pet spa, love the concept, love the animal hospital and everything like that.
There's been a lot of thought of, this is a community, and we're trying to fill in all the holes and really bring amenities, not just to these residents, but to all of Lee Summit.
Yeah, and that's kind of part of the issue with the roadways, is that we have a lot of retail on this one as well. It's not just an apartment complex with, everyone that has there, but we're going to have people in and out all day, which is fantastic. What a great problem to have.
Yeah.
I love that in Lee Summit. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That'll be the end of my 8 questions. Ms. Chair, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Rader?
Well, I think Commissioner Kitchens just stole all my notes off my page. Mike, you were talking about all the commercial here. Does anybody know what the mix, the percentage mix of commercial to residential is on this phase?
As far as square footage
Yeah, like square
of building areas?
Yeah.
Would anybody want to calculate that? 80,000 total. Yeah, we got 80,000 total. 1,185 residential in this.
Okay, so we're mostly commercial.
Yeah, there's a lot of commercial. Now, the other original ARIA apartments to the north, too. Keep that in mind.
Yeah.
That's why I say that's included.
That is included.
So back that out of what we're talking about here today. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so you got 585 multifamily in this phase we're talking about here today, with
So,
80,000 of commercial.
okay,
Yeah.
so now, I don't know if you can answer this one, but Mr. Maynard made a comment that just perked my ear up a little bit. And it's just kind of a curiosity thing, but you said this was originally zoned PMIX, or PMIX, and then you went to CP2. So you said we went to CP2 from the CMIX, the PMIX to get, for excitement.
I'll speak to that.
Okay, thank you.
So when we came forward with the original plan and for the ARIA apartments and the zoning of that, for that use, we also came forward at the same time, and I think the recommendation of staff at that time, our plan was totally different from this. It was really going to be just your cookie cutter pad site development. And keep in mind, the ground was owned by Unity then. So we came forward with that as our concept plan. I think the recommendation from staff was not to do PMIX with that plan and go to the commercial zoning. Now we've kind of gone full circle with what we're coming forward with here today, which is a much better product than what we would have done. And so that's why we're going back to the PMIX. So yeah, I'll take the blame for that because that's where the project was heading at the time.
Okay, great. And then I think I got all my questions answered on the hotels, and it is exciting to think that you have, businesses that want to come in now. That's pretty cool. Of course, it is close to the airport. and that does make a difference. Okay, I think that was all my questions, Chair. Thank you.
Commissioner Lovelace?
Thank you. Question for the development team, and I think it's probably for you, sir. Just, so I see what we have here. Was there any thought that was given as far as in replicating this on the ground that was previously zoned for just the RP4, this mixed-use concept that you have here, as opposed to just having the additional 600 units that were just
We have
residential up to the north?
that original RP, we acquired that with the intent that we were gonna do an apartment complex. And fortunately, through the ability and our great partner with Unity, we were able to acquire all this. That's why we haven't touched anything with that. There may be some opportunity as this fills out that we come back with an amended plan to look at more mixed use in that area. But at this time, our intent is to stay all apartments in that portion.
Sure, and I guess back then it was a standalone residential community that was gonna happen there, right? We didn't have all of this other mixed use that was gonna be there.
Correct.
And so, I was just looking at it as far as in your, what you had in the overall layout and the future potential developable area. And obviously, as we get farther away from this intersection, we have less ability to be able to do, some of the retail and commercial opportunities that are there. And so with that being adjacent to this, I thought, since everything's changed out there, maybe that would be something that you guys were considering. But just a question. And then a question for staff with regards to parking. You had a nice rendering that showed how parking broke out on this. But could you explain it in a little more detail to us, Hector? Because, and I understand there's some crossover, but I was hoping that's what you could explain to me, because I think it was, so roughly, I mean, if it was four per thousand, I think it was 1,200 parking spaces for the retail commercial, if I read that right. And then if it was 1.75 on the residential, I guess, and then how did it combine with the area that we had up to our north as far as total parking? Just kind of some of that. Can you run me through that?
So the parking for the north, and by the north area, you're talking about the RA apartments?
Correct.
So those are self-parked according to the ordinance. So those are separate from this. So you're just asking, so if I'm understanding then, if we're just addressing this part, knowing that that's kind of self-parked based on the UDO standards. So your question on this one, just to be clear.
Well, you said there was some overlap as far as.
Oh, I see. There's opportunities for shared parking,
Right.
Across all the lots. And so the way they've oriented, as opposed to having some of the more standard suburban development where all of the buildings are situated in such a way that they separate out parking and don't make it easily accessible to provide more of a pedestrian-friendly environment. So they built, when they laid this out, it's more built out in pods, so it does make it a little bit easier to, and not to pick on any one development, but let's say, for example, at Summit Woods, if I'm at, Ulta, if I'm wanting to walk to Target, I mean, it's very linear. I mean, it's very linear, so it's just not conducive or inviting to walk, just by the very nature of the way it's laid out. So here they've kind of broken it down to a little bit more pods where it is more walkable. Your distances between your parking spaces and all of your commercial and residential uses are just a fraction of what they typically would see in a standard suburban development, especially something of this scale. So they've just designed in such a way where it is kind of more broken up into pods, is what I would say.
Okay, and then as far as the actual calculations on the counts, because I think you showed somewhere where they were slightly above it, but if you just broke them out purely and said, all right, it's going to be 4 per 1,000, which some of those are probably 5 per 1,000 requirements, and then you had 585 apartment units. I think that brings us up to around 2,200 parking spaces, but I thought we had 1,500 and something. And so just kind of how did that math work out that we were saying, hey, this is what, and I understand there's some crossover. That's what I was hoping you would kind of explain to us.
Yeah. You'd have to get back to the parking calculations. So there is a table under our ordinance, or rather, they included a table in the preliminary development plan that does provide a breakout, and it's probably a little bit hard to pull it
Well,
up.
and actually, as I'm reading this, I think part of my confusion on that, Hector, is the PDP includes 299,000 total square feet of mixed-use development, and I think I was reading that and saying maybe that was their retail commercial aspect of it that would park 4 per 1,000. So I just didn't see anywhere where it broke out all the parking overall. It just said they meet it. I didn't understand how we got to that number.
Okay. I mean, a more detailed breakdown, that'd be something I can provide you. I couldn't do it right now, but
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, just a question that should be, I wanted to ask, so I don't have any more questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Benbrook?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I guess I'm going to start out with staff, so maybe Hector, you could answer a few of these. This is a total of 270 acres, total development, is that, from what I've heard so far, not this phase, but all phases included. This phase is about 40 acres from what I understand. Our UDO and zoning is characterized around smaller developments. Would that be a correct statement?
Yes, I would say it would be uncharacteristic to do this aggregate amount of square footage or acreage in one project, yes.
Okay. Looking at this overall development, was there any consideration that we might need to expand upon some of our requirements as far as green space, buffers, anything of that nature? Due to the scale, the massive scale of this project.
Sure. I can't say that there was any consideration for anything over and above what our current standard is based on just the level of amenities that they were providing, the way that they kind of congregated some of those areas to provide something a little bit more inviting use of public spaces, like some of the there's some of the images kind of show opportunities for kind of cafe seating and those types of things. But over and above, and they've got that at the north, you could see in that far north end, you've got that spine between the apartments that provides quite a bit of concentrated green space area. So over and above what our ordinance requires, no, I can't say that we considered anything differently.
Okay. This would be for the applicant, and I don't know which one of you want to tackle this one. Are any of these units for sale? Is it all rental?
No, these are all rental units,
Okay. So even the ones that you're calling brownstone are rental?
are rentals.
Was there any consideration to the heat island effect that you're creating with these massive parking lots?
Our architect and engineer is working through energy code and all those components as the buildings are designed.
If I can add to that, and it also relates to your comment about open space. Because we have that large detention tract, that does help with our open space calcs, obviously, but this all adds up. We do have a lot of, because of the requirements in the code and the buffers adjacent to public streets, and then the green spaces interior to the site, plus the detention tract, we're actually at 49% open space on this phase, which is quite a bit. And so that will, and the green island, the islands you see on this plan, we do have, I think we're, don't want to say it's the best you've ever seen, but, as far as heat island, I think we are providing quite a bit of green space that should help with that, and there'll be a lot of trees.
Follow-up question. So when this site plan was developed, was the rest of Lee Summit's characteristic taken into consideration when this site plan was developed?
Certainly with I would say so. I mean, we have a pretty extensive.
Looked at Lee Summit from Google Earth. Have you seen how much green space is there?
I've looked at portions of Lee Summit on Google Earth over the years, but I don't know what specific part you're talking about.
The whole city.
Yeah.
That's, when I moved here, that's one of the things I liked about Lee Summit. I'm not gonna, harp on comments. I'll save most of my comments for later. When I moved Lee Summit, it was the rural atmosphere. Everywhere you go, there's trees, grass, large buffer spaces, right? That's what makes Lee Summit Lee Summit. Lots of parks too. You don't see this in any of these 270 acres. But that's more of a comment than a question. So I'm gonna try to keep this section of it to questions. If I may follow up with that, I heard comments made about community and how the community fits in with all these little retail niches and how there's amenities, and I do see these things. I see on the very north end, there's kind of sketched in a park on this large detention basin. There's a pool on the south end. Having lived in apartments early in my life, I noticed that community is micro and macro. You've planned on the macro. How have you planned on the micro community? The community of the building itself, not all the buildings combined.
I'll try to tackle that one. Getting back to my earlier comment, one of the reasons that we selected this developer was a long-term vision. And you heard a comment made earlier about these are all private streets, which no developer typically would do this. Back to what we had planned on this would have been your typical pad side development. We would have parceled it all out, been parking lot, parking lot, parking lot. You had a C-store in the corner, and we went from there. So what we're going for here is a vision of what people said they wanted when we went through the master plan, and I participated in the master planning effort here for the city as well. And as far as community, this is one developer. So the apartments to the north and everything we're talking about, we're not talking to people about selling off properties, just so we're clear. The developer is going to own those hotels. The way we're doing this project cohesively, you're going to get more community here than you would if we just have a freestanding multifamily project. Does that address what you're trying to get to?
Not necessarily, but I understand what you're trying to say. Let me rephrase it a little bit. I think it's lot 10, which is the building in the middle left of your screen, that small one off to the side there, right?
Yes.
If I believe that's an apartment complex, if I'm in that building and let's say I'm a single mother with a young child, what does my day-to-day around that building look like? There's hardly any grass. There's no place I could take my child right outside to play. I have no amenities. I've got to go all the way across the complex to receive anything. I've got a hot parking lot out front. I've got a road at the back. Those are the type of community experiences I'm talking about. Lee Summit, you can go outside your door and find a green space within a walking distance.
Yeah, and that's what we're creating here. There's a green space within their walking distance.
I would disagree. I would say all around that building is nothing but concrete. Right? You've got parking lots stacked next to each other. But again, that's more of a comment, and I'll save that for the comment. Maybe I think the rest of it I'm going to save for the comment section. Thank you, Chair.
I was going to circle back to Commissioner Jana Ford, just to see if she has anything.
Yeah, I do. And Commissioner Brembrook actually brought up something that I was going to bring up too. It just seems that there's a comparatively just more parking and pavement than there are green spaces. To kind of help offset, have there's been any discussions for maybe green roofs or something like that to help add to it? And then the other question was going to be, I have a young daughter. I am excited to live in my neighborhood because we have playgrounds, and I don't see any of those either. So I guess the question is there any talks of adding additional amenities for those individual units? So it's more of a, here's your apartment complex. You've got your own amenities to go, like your playground or like a dog park, or that's kind of where I'm going with, I guess. Is there more granular discussion that we're not seeing on paper?
Thank you for the question. I'll take a stab at this. And I guess my comment would be, I think this village concept here, the first phase here that we're talking about, is more of an urban type of design where it does provide green space and walkability and things. The space for playgrounds, may be looked at here, but I would say that's probably more standard to what you'd see probably on the north of this, where you have the apartments in the future. More of that kind of standard apartment community is where you might incorporate some of those amenities. in this more kind of urban design of the village that we have here with mixed use, it's not something that's incorporated right now. There are, the interior kind of clubhouse area, in the buildings that can be used, but as far as an outdoor playground, that's not in the plan right now. Now, I guess back on the green space and parking again, I don't think you'll ever find a development of a commercial development where you have an equal amount of pavement and green space. It's not feasible to ever have a substantial amount of square footage of building and have an equal amount of those two things. Usually it's 20% open space on a site, and again, we're at over 40% on this one. Thank you.
And I do appreciate that there is significantly more green space than I would say that there would traditionally be on a large project like this. But kind of going back to your comment about the apartment complexes and the playgrounds being on the north side, you're talking not phase one then, right?
Correct.
So who are you anticipating your tenants being? Are you anticipating them to be just couples without kids or just not families with kids in general, lacking that amenity?
I guess I'm probably speaking for the developer, but I would say it's for everybody. I mean, I don't think it's meant, I think this could be for people with children. It could be people who are older in their careers and retiring. It could be people just getting started. I think it's really meant for everybody to have a really good, diverse community.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me. Just wanted to say perhaps the applicant can put up their landscape plan or their development plan instead of the rendering we were looking at, because that gives a more accurate depiction of all the plantings and the green space and where the green areas are for
Okay.
discussion.
Give me 1 second, please. Sorry, I was just there, and then I clicked something. Okay. Yeah, yeah, that's true. I mean, the rendering didn't show this area here green, but I mean, this, again, where you can see where all the trees are, obviously, are the green spaces, right? So you have this nice large area here in the middle, and then we have along all the streets, there's going to be a lot of green space and walkability and on the exterior of the site. So, I mean, there's, especially with the heat island effect, I mean, we're going to make sure that this is landscaped very nicely and a lot of trees in here, and that'll help with that.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions from the commission? I just have a couple. These are more, I'm curious, and this is for the applicant. And this is specific to some of the amenities, or actually, that athletic club, is that going to be open to the residents, or is it going to be open to maybe people who have who are renting office space there as well?
The way we set up our developments, the athletic club fitness of it, amenity is for the residents, but typically our office users at least in our development in Columbia, we grant typically the commercial user a couple memberships to our club, and they can designate how they want that to their employees.
Okay, and then on the parking garage, is that open to the commercial renters as well, or is it just for the apartment?
The way we have this laid out, it's cross parking garage
Okay.
and surface space for residents and commercial users.
Okay.
And I will point out in this, just to reiterate, that rendering did not represent this green space island between these buildings. So directly out from that building is a large green space area for dogs play, able to get out of the concrete jungle.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, if we're done with questions, I'll open it up for comments. I'm going to start with Commissioner Lovelace. Okay. Commissioner Rader?
Well, I probably looked over this development more than any other development that's ever come to the planning, because it's huge, and I think it's probably the biggest one we've ever had, right? I think it's very nice. I think it's well planned. It looks like it is high quality. I would love in the future, I say this all the time, and it probably falls on deaf ears, but that having 2,700 to 2,900 is on the Discovery website of rental units. But today you told us 2,791 units. I don't know if that will change in the future, but that's to me, a lot of rental units concentrated in one area. And so my comment would just be, since in the Ignite plan we are looking for diverse housing options for people, that I like the fact that there's retail, there's a mix of retail and all the different things commercial that you have in there. But I think townhomes would be very nice too to have in there, could be owner occupied in the future if that's something that could be considered. I think it'd be great. I think people would love to own in there. And I think it would help property values. So that's just my comment. Thanks so much, you guys. Appreciate you.
Commissioner Kitchens?
Thank you, Chair. I like it. I know there are some differing opinions. My biggest problem is with the traffic it's going to cause, but quite frankly, we don't solve that issue by ignoring it. And traffic, road development usually follows the development first, unfortunately, and then the infrastructure second. To Commissioner Benbrook's points, I get 100% where he's coming from. Lee's Summit is a green city. I do know, however, that this is a good compromise between commercial and multifamily. I also know that right next door is Unity Village that has a ton of green space, but I understand walking there with a kid. To Commissioner Jana Ford's point, that just can't happen either. It's just not that connected over there. So really, we look at ourselves as the city with our little units all over that are disconnected, and we're trying to work on that as a city. But it also speaks to our strength, because I can tell you they're going to put a bakery or a cookie place in there, and we have Crumble over there in Summit Woods. We could probably support those two, but they have to be separated. They have to be far enough apart where they're not competing with each other. And I've said that once, that's one of the powers of our different marketplaces. I also know that with multifamily, if we were going to put the multifamily that our projections have said we need, right next to our neighborhoods and the green spaces, we would have pitchforks and torches all over us. Putting it right next to the airport, I think, is an excellent use of that space, and to our good friends at Unity Village for annexing that. Wow, I can't tell you about a better partner. I can't even think of a better partner city to have right up against us than Unity Village, and their beautiful facilities, and they're working with us. So I understand completely what everyone is saying, but in my mind, this is the right spot for this. And we're going to see Lee Summit develop in ways that some of us aren't going to 100% agree with. But there's a lot of people who are going to rent these apartments who do agree with it. And they're future citizens of Lee Summit. And I want to make sure that they're getting the best possible and available product. My concerns, once again, are completely roadway driven. It is a major concern, especially as we look forward to the development that comes across Colburn with 470. It seems like a lot and a little, quite frankly, in an area where we already see a lot of traffic. And I would just voice my opinion openly to the development that they work very closely with our streets to solve those issues, because while this phase is on the north side of Colburn, things that come on the south side of Colburn, I probably, for one, will not be as friendly towards. Traffic-wise, it's going to cause some issues. However, this is the right spot for this. 100%, in my opinion, the right spot for this. I think the airport would agree with me. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'm going to go to Commissioner Jana Ford for any comments.
Thank you, Chair. I generally like the idea of mixed use. I think it's a great use of incorporating that 24/7 kind of security where you've got your retail down below and residents, whether it's rented or owned above. But I'm just having trouble trying to see what the day-to-day use of people who would be renting are. I think it meets a good demographic of what they're wanting, like the close proximity to amenities such as like bakery or what have you. But when it comes to families, I'm struggling to kind of see what that looks like. Where would they feel comfortable sending their kids riding a bike around? Like where would the kids just hang out? There's no shelter, no like picnic kind of idea. There's the pool, which is beautiful, but I think having a little bit more of that green space that Lee Summit's so well known for, their parks, their areas of green spaces. That's really the only comment I have, and maybe a little issue I have with the project in general, but I think it's really well thought out. I think these phases are going to be a nice little destination spot in addition to what we have like Summit, Chipman, and those other spaces. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Benbrook?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to start off by basically saying this is a huge commitment. 270 acres of development's massive, and we appreciate you considering Lee Summit. I'll continue with my comments with I don't think it fits in Lee Summit. I think this is something that you see in Overland Park. I think it has more of that characteristic than Lee Summit. I would have liked to have seen the site plan reflect Lee Summit, not a place in downtown Kansas City. Unfortunately, you've got a problematic site where you have a large detention pond which eats up a lot of your open space. It would have been better if you could have broke that open space up and created niches within and around the family style buildings instead of all combined into one location, but you've got a challenge on this site. And I understand that. When I look at the scale of this, it is hard because our zoning and our UDO does not address a scale of this size. And to be honest, I think it was presented in the very beginning that this is 4 to 5 times the largest development that's come into Lee Summit. So part of it is the lack of our understanding of what the scale of this is going to be. Unfortunately, I don't think the residents of Lee Summit that have been here for a long time are going to venture over there because it's going to feel so alien to them. I think whatever residents live in that area are going to be the residents that frequent that area. And I don't think it's going to really, in the mental minds of established Lee Summit people, is going to be part of Lee Summit. I think they're going to consider it North Lee Summit. I don't think it's a bad development. I just don't think it has the characteristic of Lee Summit. I think the buildings look nice. I think there was a lot of work put into it. But I don't think it captures the essence of what Lee Summit is or what the people have come to love Lee Summit for. I would like to see some ownership mixed in with the rental community. I think. Okay, I think that's solved. I think the backbone to all communities are people that own homes. And we've got 270 acres of rental community, which I think is going to be a failure point. And I think that needs to be considered moving forward. If you don't have some spots and some opportunities for people to buy and live there, it's going to affect the community. I mean, you've got to imagine that 270 acres of rental space, I think, is a miss. Having said that, I will not be supporting the site plan as it currently is today. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could just state one thing, I think Commissioner Benbrook is dead on with the UDO, and that our facilities, our UDO as it currently stands is not geared towards developments this size, and I would further push us to consider that and amending the UDO as we move forward. I think Commissioner Benbrook's right on with that, as a matter of fact. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess now we're out of a public hearing, so I can't really ask the question, I guess. Can we open that back up so I can get clarification regarding the UDO and how it fits into this project? Oh, I haven't officially opened it up. Boy, I'm not with it tonight. Okay. I want to reopen application PL 2023-5698. Do I need to read the whole thing? I probably do. Oh, I don't? Okay.
I don't think you need to. We
Okay.
understand your intent.
All right. Thank you. It's been hard. Okay. So I guess I wanted to see if you could talk to us about that. Either one of you, whoever wants to take it.
Yeah, so I guess, is there a specific question for us to address?
Well, it's been brought up by the commissioners that our UDO doesn't support a project this big, and I just wondered if someone could speak to that.
Ms. Chair, if I could clarify probably the commission's intent on that. The UDO, most developments, all developments have been smaller than this in the past. And I think as a commission, we feel that the UDO and any movement forward should consider larger developments, staring at this and some other developments that are in the pipeline that are very large. Maybe there's time to look at UDO requirements such as setbacks and green space requirements on large scale items. So would that be a capability of amending the UDO at any point? I guess just for our future advisement. Thank you.
Well, my question was really related to this application, how our UDO doesn't apply to this application, or how it's not congruent. Because it's been mentioned a couple of times, I want to understand why we are saying that, I guess.
Yeah. Amy Nassif, Deputy Director. So a couple thoughts there. Our UDO has established design and development criteria for all developments. We don't necessarily single out if you're over X acres, then do this. But we still have, open space requirements, setback requirements, parking requirements, shared parking requirements. Characteristics are going to be a little bit different when you have a development of this size, because you're going to have increased areas of pedestrian connectivity as opposed to more vehicular, parking areas and things like that. So I guess I would say we did review very thoroughly. It does meet our UDO requirements. Completely understand some of the requests regarding green space and other things that we'd like to see maybe more of. But I think that's separable than saying our UDO is lacking or missed something, if that makes sense. Every project has their own characteristics and personalities to it, and the items in the UDO are also minimums. They're not maximums. So when we talk about a minimum buffer area of 10 feet or minimum open space areas, again, we refer to those as minimums, not the maximum where the bar ends. It's where the bar starts, if that makes sense as well. So definitely we can always continue to look at increased opportunities for common areas and things of that nature on larger developments, but we're confident that code requirements as they stand have been met currently.
Okay, so basically, it's the same UDO, it's scalable. And so we're talking bigger numbers, basically.
So I can add one additional thought. This is something that comes to mind. When the Longview development was originally proposed in 2002 or so by the original developer, I just did a quick calculation. I'm not sure how accurate this is, but I did a quick area calculation, and it's 215 plus acres, the whole, what we think of as Longview. including the residential on the south too. And at that time, the UDO was specifically amended to incorporate a concept plan. At the time, the UDO was originally adopted around 2000, and it just had the preliminary development plan, final development plan approach. And that developer specifically requested an additional tool, which was the concept plan that was added to the UDO. And then, I forget precisely the history, but the original rezoning for the Longview area was accompanied by a concept plan with different chunks of development, apartments, single-family, commercial, historic preservation, et cetera. That wasn't carried out over time because the development changed quite a bit, and it's still being developed today. But the point that I'm trying to make is there is, I think, there is a provision that's in the UDO now, if they chose to use it, which they're not, which is they could have presented a concept plan for a big project because that's exactly why the concept plan exists, and it was for a project that I think might technically be bigger in size than this one, and on a land mass scale. But they're proceeding with a series of multiple preliminary development plans as opposed to a concept plan and then preliminary development plans. So those are my thoughts on the question of, does our UDO accommodate large-scale developments? I think the argument can be made that it does. That doesn't necessarily make your decision any easier when you're considering a huge development like this for all the reasons you've been discussing. But I think there's, we have tried to accommodate that in the past.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I guess I just wanted to add a few comments about this project.
Yes, you'll need to close the public hearing. If you have any more deliberation, that's fine, and then you can proceed to your vote.
So no more questions. Okay, I guess we're back into comments. I may get this right by the time we leave tonight. I just wanted to say that it's very impressive that you have tenants and you're serious about your tenants. You gave the names. You kind of put them out there so we know. That's impressive to me. And it's a good mix of the apartments and the actual the commercial part. I thought it's a beautiful project. I like its proximity to the airport. I think, as Commissioner Kitchen said, the location is excellent. I live in Lakewood. I see more. I'm actually in the flight path, so I see a lot more planes landing. And more jets, actually. So I think this will help our economy. I think it will be good for us. There's going to be restaurants that people that live in the Lakewood area, we don't have a lot of restaurants right in that area, so that's good. I think it looks very well thought out and very pretty project. And I thank you guys for presenting this. That, I guess I am looking for a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move.
Oh, it's you. That's
Yeah,
right.
that's me.
Okay.
I move to recommend approval of application number PL 2023-011, rezoning from CP2 to PMIX and preliminary development plan Discovery Park Zone 1, approximately 39.42 acres located at the northwest corner of Northeast Colburn Road and Northeast Douglas Street, Intrinsic Development LLC applicant.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Can we get a vote on that, please?
Mark Kitchens,
Yes.
Cindy Rader,
Yes.
Jake Lovelace,
Yes.
Dana Arth,
Yes.
Tanya Jonna Ford,
Yes.
Randy Benbrook,
No.
And the motion passes. And I guess we can move on to roundtable. Does anybody have anything?
I'll just add, I think that was a good discussion. I think wonderful, valuable points were made, and I'd like to thank everybody, including applicants, that come to our city to do business. It's great. Just wonderful, wonderful job. Thank you all for putting in great opinions, and I think this is good movement forward for UDO. A UDO search, so thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, I think looking at the UDO in future, if we have, I would like to propose that we make some amendments to it as far as when it comes to acreage of developments, that when it surpasses a certain size, we are allowed to increase or dictate green space. And I don't know exactly what that would look like, so much as if it's increased by a percentage, or if we're allowed to have a little bit more control how the green space is used. In other words, instead of clumping it all in one or two locations, we can dictate that it gets divided into 5 or 6 spaces to spread it out a little bit. I don't know, like the language that would be or how that would fit in, but I could see how that would, if we do have more projects of this size coming along, be a valuable tool.
Sounds like work for the lawyers.
Certainly not me.
Anybody else have?
I have something.
Okay.
Commissioner Benbrook brought up something that was a big concern of mine, and that is the amount of rental units that we continue to build here in Lee Summit. And so I just wanted to say that at this point, you know, we want to look at the future of our city, and we want to make sure that we have a vision for what it's ultimately going to look like. But we also have the rental studies that have been done, and you know, at this time we still lack in rental properties as far as what the study shows. And I think at this point, of course, I'm for home ownership, and I want to see more homes being built here that people can own. But I understand too that at this point in time right now, we have to just look at what's kind of in front of us, but at the same time know that in the future, this is a 9-year, 10-year project, that maybe by the time your 10 years come, and I know you've got another 1,000, 1,200 that are coming of rental units that you projected to come on in the future, that maybe that's something that's tweaked or changed. Or so I just kind of wanted to agree with Commissioner Benbrook on that. I feel the same way about that, but I guess we have to kind of look at what's in front of us right now and then be able to know that we're going to tweak, or that if we get beyond that number of multifamily rental units, that we take a look at that and we make sure that we're not getting overbalanced with our building. And this really wasn't for you guys. It was just kind of a comment in general for Roundtable. But anyway, thank you.
Just one more comment real quick, probably to put more levity into the situation. Hey, MoDOT's doing a great job cleaning up the highways here. So kudos to everybody from the city who worked on that and made that a reality. And kudos to MoDOT for keeping their promises and being a partner of Lee Summit.
Okay.
One more.
Okay, and I'll go after you because I had something.
Okay. I just wanted to piggyback on a comment already made. We had a shortage of rentals. We had a shortage of apartments we're fixing. But the next phase to that is when people are done renting and they want to buy and they have fallen in love with the community of Lee Summit, they're not going to be able to afford a $500,000 or $400,000 home. What's the next step is an entry-level home, and we are certainly lacking those in Lee Summit number-wise. So if we don't continue to look at how a young person develops through their ownership of homes, we're going to find that we have a huge gap. Thank you.
That's true. And I hope that's what we're going to be working on in the next few years, is some more acquirable housing, because we need it real bad. And townhomes would be something that would solve that problem, because I think that they could be more affordable. They could be made to be more affordable, acquirable.
Yeah, I rented for a while, and I did like it. I did want, I kept looking for opportunities to buy something like that, though, just because I wanted control over my price. Honestly, I didn't want to pay rising rent rates. I wanted to pay rising property taxes instead. Okay, I just had one other thing. Sorry.
That was her comment.
I just wanted to say, in response to that we're not like Overland Park. I think we're at a place where, I've said this before about apartments. If we keep building apartments, we're going to continue to be a bedroom community, and because we're not bringing businesses in. But this project's bringing in some business near an area of our city with the airport that can really boost our economic growth. So I think I think you have to start somewhere, and you have to grow, because what we don't really want is people to leave our city to go to other businesses outside of our city if we're trying to keep business here and revenues here. So I see it differently as far as, it's not that I don't like green space, because I live in a part of town that we have a lot of green space and I love it. But I just really think that something like what we talked about tonight is a good way to just try to keep more people here. That's just my opinion on that. Anything else? Okay. Thank you, guys. We had a really great meeting tonight. Have a good evening, and we are adjourned.